Welcome back to B90. We're in day 23. I've got a new microphone, which I hope the audio quality will be a lot better now, and I hope that this helps. Which is cool because it gives me the ability to have better camera angles, and it's I don't know. My mind is all over the place right now, and I don't really know how to do all of this stuff, but I'm struggling and fighting and getting it all together. And today we're going to read the end of 2 Samuel, and tomorrow and begin a new book. We're going to begin in 1 Kings. Towards the end of this, we'll get to the end of. We're reading in one chapter into 1 Kings, so it's not too far. We'll just be introducing it. And man, this is really just the end of the story for David, and the beginning of the story for Solomon, which was, honestly, the wisest man that ever lived. We learned that. We're going to learn a lot of that when we get into Ecclesiastes, and then we're going to get into Proverbs, and Solomon wrote a bunch of the Psalms too. He was an incredibly smart person. He was well liked. And, when we get into 2 Kings, you'll see that he wasn't so well liked also. But enough about that. Let's jump right into the scripture. In 2 Samuel chapter 17, Ahithophel said to Absalom, "I would choose 12,000 men and set out tonight in pursuit of David. I would attack him while he is weak and weary. I would strike him with terror, and then all the people with him will flee. I would strike down only the king and bring all the people back to you. The death of the man you seek will mean the return of all. All the people will be unharmed." This plan seemed good to Absalom and to all the elders of Israel. But Absalom said, "Summon also Hushai, the Archite, so we can hear what he has to say as well." When Hushai came to him, Absalom said, "Ahithophel has given this advice. Should we do what he says? If not, give us your opinion." Hushai replied to Absalom, "The advice Ahithophel was given is not good this time. You know your father and his men. They are fighters, just as fierce as a wild bear robbed of her cubs. Besides, your father is an experienced fighter. He will not spend the night with the troops. Even now he is hidden in a cave or some other place. If he should attack your troops first, whoever hears about it will say, 'There has been a slaughter among the troops who follow Absalom.' Then even the bravest soldier, whose heart is like that heart of a lion, will melt with fear. For all Israel knows that your father is a fighter, and that those men with him are brave." Verse 11. "So I advise you, let all Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, as numerous as the sand on the seashore, be gathered to you, with yourself leading them into battle. Then we will attack him wherever he may be found, and we will fall on him as dew settles on the ground. Neither he nor any of his men will be left alive. If he withdraws into a city, then all Israel will bring ropes into that city. We'll bring ropes to that city, and we will drag it down to the valley until not so much as a pebble is left." 14. Absalom and all the men of Israel said, "The advice of Hushai the Archite is better than that of Ahithophel. For the Lord has determined to frustrate the good advice of Ahithophel in order to bring disaster on Absalom." 15. Hushai told Zadok and Abiathar, the priest, "Ahithophel has advised Absalom of the elders of Israel to do such and such, but I have advised them to do so and so. So now send a message at once and tell David not to spend the night at the fords in the wilderness, cross over without fail. The king of all the people with him will be swallowed up." 17. Jonathan and Ahimaaz were staying in En-Rogel. A female servant was to go and inform them, and they were to go and tell King David. for they could not risk being seen entering the city. But a young man saw them and told Absalom. So the two of them left at once and went into the house of a man Bahurim. He had a well in his courtyard, and they climbed down into it. His wife took a covering and spread it over the opening of the well and scattered grain over it. No one knew anything about it. Verse 20. When Absalom's men came to the woman at the house, they asked, "Where is Ahimaaz and Jonathan?" The woman answered, "They crossed over the brook." The men searched but found no one. So they returned to Jerusalem. After they had gone, the two climbed out of the well and went to inform King David. They said to him, "Set out and cross the river at once. Ahithophel has advised such and such against you." So David and all the people with him set out and crossed the Jordan. By daybreak, no one was left who had not crossed the Jordan. 23. When Ahithophel saw that his advice had not been followed, he saddled his donkey and set out for his house in his hometown. He put his house in order and then hanged himself. So he died and was buried in his father's tomb. Verse 24. David sent men to Mahanaim, and Absalom crossed the Jordan with all the men of Israel. Absalom had appointed Amasa over the army in place of Joab. Amasa was the son of Jether, an Ishmaelite, who had married Abigail, the daughter of Naish, and the sister of Zeruiah, the mother of Joab. The Israelites and Absalom camped in the land of Gilead. Verse 27. When David came to Mahanaim, Shobi, son of Nahash, from Rahab of the Ammonites, and Machir, son of Amiel, from Lo-debar, and Barzillai, the Gileadite, from Rogelim, brought bedding and bowls and articles of pottery. They also brought wheat and barley, flour and roasted grain, beans and lentils, honey and curds, sheep and cheese from cow's milk, for David and his people to eat. For they said, "The people have become exhausted and hungry and thirsty in the wilderness." Chapter 18. David mustered the men who were with him and appointed over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. David sent out his troops, a third under the command of Joab, a third under Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, and a third under Ittai the Gittite. The king ordered the troops, "I myself will surely march out with you." Verse 3. But the men said, "You must not go out. If we're forced to flee, they won't care about us. Even if half of us die, they won't care. But you are worth 10,000 of us. It would be better now for you to give us support from the city." The king answered, "I will do whatever it seems best to you." So the king stood beside the gate while all his men marched out in units of hundreds and of thousands. The king commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, "Be gentle with the young man Absalom for my sake." And the troops heard the king giving orders concerning Absalom to each of the commanders. Verse 6. David's army marched out of the city to fight Israel, and the battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. There Israel's troops were routed by David's men, and the casualties that day were great, 20,000 men. The battle spread out over the whole countryside, and the forest swallowed up more men that day than the sword. Verse 9. Now Absalom happened to meet David's men. He was riding his mule, and the mule went under the thick branches of a large oak. Absalom's hair got caught in the tree, and he was left hanging in midair, while the mule he was riding kept going. One of the men saw what had happened, and he told Joab, "I just saw Absalom hanging in an oak tree." Joab said to the man who had told him this, "What? You saw him? Why didn't you strike him to the ground right there? Then I would have had to give you 10 shekels of silver and a warrior's belt." But the man replied, "Even if 1,000 shekels were weighed out into my hands, I would not lay a hand on the king's son. In our hearing, the king commanded you and Abishai and Attai to protect the young man Absalom for my sake. And if I had put my life in jeopardy, and nothing is hidden from the king, you would have kept your distance from me." Verse 14. Joab said, "I'm not going to wait like this for you." So he took 3 javelins in his hand and plunged them into Absalom's heart while Absalom was still alive in the oak tree. And 10 of Joab's armor-bearers surrounded Absalom and struck him and killed him. 16. Then Joab sounded the trumpet, and the troops stopped pursuing Israel, for Joab halted them. They took Absalom and threw him into a big pit in the forest and piled up a large heap of rocks over him. Meanwhile, all the Israelites fled to their homes. During his lifetime, Absalom had taken a pillar and erected it in the king's valley as a monument to himself, for he thought, "I have no son to carry on the memory of my name." He named a pillar after himself, and it is called Absalom's monument to this day. Verse 19. Now Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, "Let me run and take the news to the king that the Lord has vindicated him by delivering him from the hand of his enemies." "You are not alone to take news today," Joab told him. "You may take the news another time, but..." Verse 20. "You are not the one to take the news today," Joab told him. "You may take the news another time, but you must not do so today, because the king's son is dead." 21. Then Joab said to a Cushite, "Go and tell the king what you have seen." The Cushite bowed down before Joab and ran off. Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, again said to Joab, "Come, what may. Please let me run behind the Cushite." But Joab replied, "My son, what do you want to do? Why do you want to go? You don't have any news that will bring you a reward? You don't have any news that will bring you a reward?" He said, "Come what may, I want to run." So Joab said, "Run." Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and outran the Cushite. While David was sitting between the inner and outer gates, the watchman went up to the roof of the gateway by the wall. As he looked out, he saw a man running alone. The watchman called out to the king and reported it. The king said, "If he is alone, he must have good news." And the runner came closer and closer. 26. When the watchman saw another runner, he called down to the gatekeeper, "Look, another man is running alone." The king said, He must be bringing good news too. The watchman said, "It seems to me that the first one runs like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok." "He's a good man," the king said. "He comes with good news." 28. Then Ahimaaz called out to the king, "All is well." He bowed down before the king with his face to the ground. "Praise be to the Lord your God. He has delivered up those who lifted their hands against my lord the king." 29. The king asked, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Ahimaaz answered, "I saw great confusion just as Joab was about to send the king's servants to me. Your servant, but I don't know what it was." 30. The king said, "Stand aside and wait here." So he stepped aside and stood there. 31. Then the Cushite arrived and said, My lord the king, hear the good news. The Lord has vindicated you this today by delivering you from the hand of those who rose up against you. The king asked the Cushite, Is the young man Absalom safe? The Cushite replied, May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up to harm you be like that young man. 33. The king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept as he said, Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom. If only I had died instead of you, oh Absalom, my son, my son. Chapter 19. Joab was told, The king is weeping and mourning for Absalom. And for the whole army of the victory that day was turned into mourning, because on that day the troops heard it and said, The king is grieving for his son. The men stole into the city that day as men steal in who are ashamed when they flee from battle. The king covered his face and cried aloud, Oh, my son Absalom! Oh, Absalom, my son, my son! Verse 5. Then Joab went into the house of the king and said, Today you have humiliated all your men, who have just saved your life and the lives of your sons and daughters and the lives of your wives and concubines. You love those who hate you and hate those who love you. You have made it clear today that the commanders and their men mean nothing to you. I see that you would be pleased if Absalom were alive today and that all of us were dead. Now go out and encourage your men. I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a man will be left with you by nightfall. This will be worse for you than all the calamities that have come on you from your youth until now. Verse 8. So the king got up and took his seat in the gateway. When the men were told, The king is sitting in the gateway, they all came before him. Meanwhile, the Israelites had fled their homes. Verse 9. Throughout the tribes of Israel, all the people were arguing among themselves, saying, The king delivered us from the hand of our enemies. He is the one who rescued us from the hand of the Philistines. But now he has fled into the country to escape from Absalom. And Absalom, whom we anointed to rule over us, has died in battle. So why do you say nothing about bringing the king back? Verse 11. King David sent a message to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. Ask the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his palace? Since what is being said about throughout Israel has reached the king at his quarters. You are my relatives, my own flesh and blood. So why do you be the last to bring back the king? So Amasa, and say to Amasa, Are you not my own flesh and blood? May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if you are not the commander of my army for life, in place of Joab. Verse 14. He won over the hearts of the men of Judah, so that they were all of one mind. They sent word to the king, Return, you and all your men. And the king returned and went as far as the Jordan. Now the men of Judah had come to Gilgal to go out and to meet the king and bring him across the Jordan. Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, hurried down with the men of Judah to meet King David. With him were 1,000 Benjamites, along with Ziba and the steward of Saul's household, and his 15 sons and 20 servants, and they rushed to the Jordan, there where the king was, and they crossed the ford. They crossed at the ford to take the king's household over and do whatever he wished. When Shimei, son of Gera, crossed the Jordan, he fell prostrate before the king and said to him, May the Lord not hold me guilty. Do not remember how your servant did wrong on the day the Lord my king left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his mind. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned. But today I have come here as the first from the tribes of Joseph to come down and to meet my lord the king. 21. Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said, Shouldn't Shimei be put to death for this? He cursed the Lord's anointed. 22. David replied, What does this have to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? What right do you have to interfere? Should anyone be put to death in Israel today? Don't I know that today I am king over Israel? So the king said to Shimei, You shall not die. And the king promised him an oath, on oath. 24. Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, also went down to meet the king, and he had not taken care of his feet, or trimmed his mustache, or washed his clothes, from the day the king left until the day he returned safely. When he came from Jerusalem to meet the king asked him, Why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth? He said, My lord the king, since I, your servant, am lame, I said, I will have my donkey saddled and will ride on it, so I can go with the king. But Ziba, my servant, betrayed me, and he has slandered your servant to my lord the king. My lord the king is like an angel of God. So do whatever you wish. All my grandfather's descendants deserve nothing but death from my lord the king. But you gave your servant a place among those who eat at your table. So what right do I have to make any more appeals to the king? 29. The king said to him, Why say more? I ordered you and Ziba to divide the land. I order you and Ziba to divide the land. 30. Mephibosheth said to the king, Let him take everything, now that my lord the king has returned home safely. Barzillai, the Gileadite, also came down from Rogelim to cross the Jordan with the king and to send him on his way from there. Now Barzillai was very old, 80 years of age. He had provided for the king during his stay in Mahanaim, for he was a very wealthy man. The king said to Barzillai, Cross over with me and stay with me in Jerusalem, and I will provide for you. But Barzillai answered the king, How many more years will I live, so that I should go up to Jerusalem with the king? I am now 80 years old. Can I tell the difference between what is enjoyable and what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats and drinks? Can I still hear the voices of male and female singers? Why should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant will cross over the Jordan and the king for a short distance, but why should the king reward me in this way? Let your servant return, that I may die in my own town near my tomb of my father and mother. But here is your servant Kimham. Let him cross over with my lord the king. Do for him whatever you wish. 38. The king said, Kimham will cross over with me, and I will do for him whatever you wish. And anything you desire from me, I will do for you. So all the people crossed the Jordan, and then the king crossed over. And the king kissed Barzillai and bid him farewell, and Barzillai returned to his home. 40. When the king crossed over to Gilgal, Kimham crossed with him. All the troops of Judah and the half of the troops of Israel had taken the king over. So all the men of Israel were coming to the king and say to him, Why did our brothers, the men of Judah, steal the king away and bring him and his household across the Jordan together with all his men? All the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, We did this because the king is closely related to us. Why are you so angry about it? Have we eaten any of the king's provisions? Have we taken anything for ourselves? When the men of Israel answered the men of Judah, We have 10 shares in the king, so we have greater claim on David than you have. Why then do you treat us with contempt? Weren't we the first to speak of bringing back our king?" But the men of Judah pressed their claims, even more than the men of Israel. Chapter 20. Now a troublemaker named Sheba, son of Bichri, the Benjamite, happened to be there. He sounded the trumpet and shouted, "We have no share in David, no part in Jesse's son. Every man to his tent, Israel." Verse 2. So all the men of Israel departed David to follow Sheba, son of Bichri. But the men of Judah stayed with their king all the way from the Jordan to Jerusalem. When David returned to his palace in Jerusalem, he took the 10 concubines he had left to take care of the palace and put them in a house under guard. He provided for them, but had no sexual relations with them. They were kept in confinement until the day of their death, living as widows. Then the king said to Amasa, "Summon the men of Judah to come to me within 3 days, and be here yourself." But when Amasa went to summon Judah, he took longer than the time the king had sent for him. David said to Abishai, "Now Sheba, son of Bichri, will do us more harm than Absalom did. Take your master's men and pursue him, for he will find fortified cities and escape from us." Verse 7. So Joab's men and the Kerethites and the Pelethites and all the mighty warriors went out under the command of Abishai. They marched out from Jerusalem to pursue Sheba, the son of Bichri. Verse 8. While they were at the great rock in Gibeon, Amasa came to meet them. Joab was wearing his military tunic, and he strapped over it at his waist was a belt with a dagger in its sheath. As he stepped forward, it dropped out of its sheath. Joab said to Amasa, "How are you, my brother?" Then Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him. Amasa was on his guard against the dagger in Joab's hand, and Joab plunged it into his belly, and his intestines spilled out on the ground without being stabbed again. Amasa died. Then Joab and his brother Abishai pursued Sheba, son of Bichri. Verse 11. One of Joab's men stood beside Amasa and said, "Whoever fears Joab, and whoever is for David, let him follow Joab." Amasa lay wallowing in his blood in the middle of the road, and the man saw that all his troops had came to a halt there. When he realized that everyone who had came up to Amasa and stopped, he dragged him from the road into a field and threw a garment over him. After Amasa had been removed from the road, everyone went on with Joab to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. 14. Sheba passed through all the tribes of Israel to Abel Ma'akah, whatever, and through the entire region of the Bichrites, who gathered together and followed him. All the troops with Joab came and besieged Sheba and Abel Beth Ma'akah, and they built a siege ramp up to the city, and it stood against the outer fortifications. While they were battering the wall to bring it down, a wise woman called out from the city, "Listen! Listen! Tell Joab to come here so I can speak with him." He went toward her, and she asked, "Are you Joab?" "I am," he answered. She said, "Listen to what your servant has to say." "I'm listening," he said. She continued, "Long ago they used to say, 'Get your answer at Abel,' and that settled it. We are peaceful and faithful in Israel. We are the peaceful and faithful in Israel. Why are you trying to destroy a city that is a mother in Israel? Why do you want to swallow up the Lord's inheritance? 20. Far be it from me, Joab replied. Far be it from me to swallow up or destroy. That is not the case. A man named Sheba, son of Bichri, from the house of the hill country of Ephraim, has lifted up his hand against the king, against David. Hand over this one man, and I'll draw away from the city. I will withdraw from the city. The woman said to Joab, His head will be thrown to you from the wall. 22. The woman went to all the people with her wise advice, and they cut off the head of Sheba the son of Bichri, and threw it to Joab. So he sounded the trumpet, and all his men dispersed from the city, each returning to his home. And Joab went back to the officials in Jerusalem. Went back to the king in Jerusalem. 23. Joab was over Israel's entire army. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was over the Kitharites and the Pelethites, and Adoniram was in charge of the forced labor. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahihud, was the recorder, and Shiva was the secretary. Zadok and Abiathar were priests, and Ira the Jarite was David's priest. Chapter 21. During the reign of David, there was a famine for 3 successive years. So David sought the face of the Lord. The Lord said, It is on account of Saul and his blood-stained house. It is because he put the Gibeonites to death. The king summoned the Gibeonites and spoke to them. Now the Gibeonites were not a part of Israel, but were survivors of the Amorites. The Israelites had sworn to spare them, but Saul, in his zeal for Israel and Judah, had tried to annihilate them. David asked the Gibeonites, What shall I do for you? How shall I make atonement so that you will bless the Lord's inheritance? Verse 4. The Gibeonites answered him, We have no right to demand silver or gold from Saul or his family, nor do we have the right to put anyone in Israel to death. What do you want me to do for you? David asked. They answered the king, As for the man who destroyed us and plotted against us, that we have been decimated and have no place anywhere in Israel. Let 7 of his male descendants be given to us to be killed, and their bodies exposed before the Lord at Gibeah of Saul, the Lord's chosen one. So the king said, I will give them to you. Verse 7. The king spared Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, because of the oath before the Lord that between David and Jonathan, son of Saul. But the king took Armoni and Mephibosheth, the 2 sons of Ariah's daughter, Rizpah, whom she had borne to Saul, together with the 5 sons of Saul's daughter Merab, whom she had borne to Adriel, son of Barzillai, the Meholathite. He handed them over to the Gibeonites, who killed them and exposed their bodies on a hill before the Lord. All 7 of them fell together. They were put to death during the first days of the harvest, just as the barley harvest was beginning. Verse 10. Rizpah, the daughter of Ai, she took sackcloth and spread it out for herself on a rock, from the beginning of the harvest till the rain poured down from the heavens on the bodies. She did not let the birds touch them by day, or the wild animals by night. When David was told that Ahai's daughter Rizpah told what Ahai's daughter Rizpah, Saul's concubine, had done, he went and took the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan from the citizens of Jabesh Gilead. They had stolen their bodies from the public square at Bethshan, where the Philistines had hung them after they struck Saul down in Gilboa. David brought the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan from there, and the bones of those who had been killed and exposed were gathered up. Exposed were gathered up. They buried the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan in the tomb of Saul's father Kish at Zelah in Benjamin, and did everything the king commanded. After that, God answered the prayer on behalf of the land. Verse 15. Once again there was a battle between the Philistines and Israel. David went down with his men to fight against the Philistines, and he became exhausted. And Ishbi-Benob, one of the descendants of Rapha, whose bronze spear weighed 300 shekels, and who was armed with a new sword, said he would kill David. But Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to David's rescue. He struck the Philistines down and killed him. When David's men swore to him, saying, "Never again will you go out with us to battle, so the lamp of Israel will not be extinguished." Verse 18. In the course of time there was another battle with the Philistines at Gob. At the time Shibbekai the Hushathite killed Saph, one of the descendants of Rapha. In another battle with the Philistines at Gob, Elhanan, son of Jair, the Bethlehemite, killed the brother of Goliath, the Gittite, who had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's rod. Still, in still another battle which took place at Gath, there was a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. He was also descended from Rapha. When he taunted Israel, Jonathan, son of Shimeah, David's brother, killed him. These 4 were descendants of Rapha in Gath, and they fell at the hands of David and his men. Chapter 22. David sang to the Lord the words of this song when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation. He is my stronghold, my refuge, and my Savior. From violent people you save me." Verse 4. I called to the Lord who is worthy of praise, and have been saved from my enemies. The waves of death swirled about me. The torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled around me. The snares of death confronted me. Verse 7. In my distress I called to the Lord. I called out to my God. From this temple he heard my voice. My cry came to his ears. The earth trembled and quaked. The foundations of the heavens shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke from his nostrils, consuming fire came from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. The dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his canopy around him, the dark rain clouds of the sky. Out of the brightness of his presence, bolts of lightning blazed forth. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot arrows and scattered the enemy. Great bolts of lightning he routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare, at the rebuke of the Lord, at the blast of the breath from his nostrils. Verse 17. He reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. Verse 21. The Lord has dealt with me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands. He has rewarded me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord. I am not guilty of turning from my God. All his ways are before me. I have not turned away from his decrees. I have been blameless before him, and have kept myself from sin. The Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to my cleanness. In his sight, to the faithful you show yourself faithful. To the blameless you show yourself blameless. To the pure you show yourself pure. But to the devious you show yourself shrewd. You save the humble, but your eyes are on the haughty to bring them low. You, Lord, are my lamp. The Lord turns my darkness into light. With your help, I can advance against a troop. With my God, I can scale a wall. As for God, his ways are perfect. The Lord's word is flawless. He shields all who take refuge in him. For who is God besides the Lord? And who is the rock except our God? Verse 33. It is God who arms me with strength and keeps my way secure. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He causes me to stand on the heights. He trains my hands for battle. My arms can bend a bow of bronze. You make your saving help my shield. Your help has made me great. You provide a broad path for my feet, so that my ankles do not give way. Verse 38. I pursued my enemies and crushed them. I did not turn back until they were destroyed. I crushed them completely, and they could not rise. They fell beneath my feet. You armed me with strength for battle, and you humbled my adversaries before me. You made my enemies turn their backs in flight, and I destroyed my foes. They cried for help, but there was none to save them. To the Lord he did not answer. I beat them as fine as the dust of the earth. I pounded and trampled them like mud in the streets. Verse 44. You have delivered me from the attacks of the peoples. You have preserved me as the head of nations. People I did not know now serve me. Foreigners cower before me. As soon as they heard of me, they obey me. As soon as they hear of me, they obey me, They lose heart. They come trembling from their strongholds. Verse 47. The Lord lives. Praise be to my rock. Exalted be my God, the rock of my Savior. He is the God who avenges me, who puts the nations under me, who sets me free from my enemies. You exalted me above my foes. From a violent man you rescued me. Therefore I will praise you, Lord, among the nations. I will sing the praises of your name. He gives his king great victories. He shows unfailing kindness to his anointed, to David and his descendants forever. Chapter 23. These are the last words of David. The inspired utterance of David, the son of Jesse, the utterance of the man exalted by the Most High, the man anointed by God of Jacob, the hero of Israel's songs. The Spirit of the Lord spoke through me. His word was on my tongue. The God of Israel spoke. The Rock of Israel said to me, when one rules over people in righteousness, when he rules in the fear of God, He is like the light of morning at sunrise on a cloudless morning, like the brightness after rain that brings grass from the earth. Verse 5. If my house were not right with God, surely he would not have made with me an everlasting covenant, arranged and secured in every part. Surely he would not bring to fruition my salvation, and grant me every desire. But evil men are all cast aside like thorns, which are not gathered with the land. Whoever touches thorns uses a tool of iron, or the shaft of a spear. They are burned up where they lie. Verse 8. These are the names of David's mighty warriors: Josheb, Basabeth, Tachemonite, as was a chief of 3. He raised his spear against 800 men, whom he killed in one encounter. Next to him was Eleazar, son of Dodai, the Ahohite, as one of 3 mighty warriors. He was with David when they taunted the Philistines and gathered at Pas Damim for battle, when the Israelites retreated. But Eleazar stood his ground and struck down the Philistines, and his hand grew tired and froze to the sword. The Lord brought out a great victory that day. The troops returned to Eleazar, but only to strip the dead. Verse 11. Next to him was Shammah, son of Agi, the Hararite. When the Philistines banded together at a place where there was a field full of lentils, Israel's troops fled from them. But Shammah took his stand in the middle of the field. He defended it and struck the Philistines down, and the Lord brought about a great victory. 13. During the harvest time, 3 of the 30 chief warriors came down to David at the cave of Adullam, while a band of Philistines was entering the camp in the valley of Rephaim. At the time, David was in the stronghold, and the Philistine garrison was at Bethlehem. David longed for water and said, "Oh, that someone would get me a drink of water from the gate of Bethlehem." So the 3 mighty warriors broke through the Philistine lines, drew water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem, and carried it back to David. But he refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out before the Lord. "Far be it from me, the Lord, to do this," he said. "It is not the blood of men who went at the risk of their lives. Is it not the blood of men who went at the risk of their lives?" Sorry, I messed that all the way up. And David would not drink it. Such were the exploits of the 3 mighty warriors. Verse 18. Abishai, the brother of Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was the chief of 3. He raised his spear against 300 men, whom he killed, and so he became as famous as the 3. He was not held in a greater honor than the. Was he not held in a greater honor than the 3? He became their commander, even though he was not included among them. Verse 20. Benaiah, that's it, of Jedediah, a valiant fighter from Kabzeel, performing great exploits. He struck down Moab's 2 mightiest warriors. He also went down into a pit on a snowy day and killed a lion. He struck down a huge Egyptian. Although the Egyptian had a spear in his hand, Benaiah went against him with a club, and he snatched the spear from the Egyptian's hand and killed him with his own spear. Such were the exploits of Benaiah, son of Jehoiada. He too was famous as the 3 mighty warriors. He was held in greater honor than any of the 30, but he was not included among the 3. And David put him in charge of his bodyguard. 24. Among the 33 were Ashel, brother of Joab, Asahel, brother of Joab, Elhanan, son of Dodo from Bethlehem, Shammah, the Haradite, Elika, the Haradite, Heliz, the Paltite, Ira, son of Ikesh from Tekoa, Abiezer from Anathoth, Sebekiah, the Hushathite, Zalmon, the Ahohite, Merari, the Netophathite, Heled, son of Banan, the Nephathathite. Nephtophathite. I think these names are important to say because they were important to write. So that's why I kind of make some diligence in trying to say them at least. Ithai, son of Ribai, from Gibeah in Benjamin. Benaiah, the Pirathonite. There we go. Hidai, from the ravines of Gaash. Abi Albon, the Arbathite. Azmaveth, Barhumite. Eliabah, Sha'albanite, the sons of Jashan. Jonathan, son of Shammah, the Hararite. Eliphet, son of Abishai, the Ma'akathite. Eliam, son of Ahithophel, the Gilonite. Hizro, the Carmelite. Pa'arai, the Arbite. Igal, son of Nathan, from Zobah, the son of Hagri. Zelek, the Ammonite. Naharai, the Berothite, the armor-bearer of Joab, son of Zuriah. Ira, the Ithrite. Gareb, the Ithrite. And listen to this one, verse 39. Uriah, the Hittite. They were 37 in all. Chapter 24. Again, the anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he incited David against them, saying, Go and take a census of Israel and Judah. So the king said to Joab and the army commanders with him, Go throughout the tribes of Israel from Dan to Beersheba and enroll the fighting men, so that I may know how many there are. But Joab replied to the king, May the Lord your God multiply the troops 100 times over, and may the eyes of the Lord my king see it. But why does the Lord king want to do such a thing? Verse 4. The king's word, however, overruled Joab and the army commanders, so they left the presence of the king to enroll the fighting men of Israel. After crossing the Jordan, they camped near Aroer, south of the town in the gorge, and then they went through Gad and onto Jazer. They went to Gilead and the region of Tatim Hodshi and on to Dan Ja'an and around towards Sidon. Then they went towards the forests of Tyre and all the towns of the Hivites and Canaanites. Finally, they went on to Beersheba in the Negev of Judah. After they had gone through the entire land, they came back to Jerusalem at the end of 9 months and 20 days. Verse 9. Joab reported the number of the first fighting men of the fighting men to the king. In Israel there were 800,000 able-bodied men who could handle a sword. In Judah, 500,000. And David was conscience-stricken after he had counted the fighting men, and he said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly in what I have done. Now, Lord, I beg you, take away the guilt of your servant. I have done a very foolish thing. Verse 11. Before David got up the next morning, the word of the Lord had come to Gad, the prophet, David's seer. Go and tell David, this is what the Lord says. I am going to give you 3 options. Choose one of them for me to carry out against you. So Gad went to David and said to him, this is crazy. Shall there come on you 3 years of famine in your land? Or 3 months of fleeing from your enemies while they pursue you? Or 3 days of plague in your land? Now then, think it over and decide how I should answer the one who sent me. 14. David said to Gad, I am in deep distress. Let us fall into the hands of the Lord. For his mercy is great, but do not let me fall into human hands. So the Lord sent a plague on Israel from that morning until the end of the time designated, and 70,000 of the people from Dan to Beersheba died. When the angel stretched out his hand to destroy Jerusalem, the Lord relented concerning the disaster and said to the angel who was afflicting the people, Enough! Withdraw your hand. And the angel of the Lord was then at the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. Araunah, that's the name, the Jebusite. 17. When David saw the angel who was striking down the people, he said to the Lord, I have sinned. The shepherd have done wrong, but these are sheep. What have they done? Let your hand fall on me and my family. Verse 18. On that day Gad went to David and said to him, Go up and build an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Araunah, the Jebusite. Araunah. There we go. So David went up as the Lord commanded through Gad. When Araunah looked and saw the king and his officials coming toward him, he went out and bowed down before the king with his face to the ground. Araunah said, Why has the Lord my king come to his servant? To buy your threshing floor, David answered, so I can build an altar to the Lord, that the plague on the people may be stopped. Araunah said to David, Let the Lord my king take whatever he wishes and offer it up. Here are the oxen for the burnt offering, and here are the threshing sledges and ox yokes for the wood. Your majesty, Araunah, gives all of this to the king. Araunah also said to him, May the Lord your God accept you. 24. But the king replied to Araunah, No, I insist on paying you for it. I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing. So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen and paid 50 shekels of silver for them. David built an altar to the Lord there and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship of offerings, and the Lord answered his prayer in behalf, and the plague on Israel was stopped. Alrighty, well, we are done with that. Was kind of an abrupt ending to Samuel. It does pick right up right here in First Kings, but it just feels kind of like we're missing some of that cool story, aren't we? Now is a good time to watch the Bible Project video if I put it up here, if I can. I think last time I couldn't put a different video on there, but at the end of the videos, I've been putting a link up here or here, and one of it is to subscribe to my page, because these videos come up in the middle of the night, and you can get my videos earlier than on Facebook if you're subscribed and get notifications from my page. But also I put up here links for the next video. I do that after I get the next video, so if you go back and watch them at the end of the videos, I think you can kind of just keep going through them if you were actually binge watching the Bible. That would be pretty cool. Well, let's jump in. We only got another 2 pages to read, so a page and a half for the first chapter of 1 Kings. Yep, I'm going to try and put the Bible Project video up for you. Chapter 1, 1 Kings. When King David was very old, he could not keep warm, even when they put covers over him. So his attendants said to him, "Let us look for a young virgin to serve the king and take care of him, so she can lie beside him, so that our Lord may keep warm." Then they searched throughout Israel for a beautiful young woman and found Abishai, Shunammite, and brought her to the king. The woman was very beautiful. She took care of the king and waited on him, but the king had no sexual relations with her. Now, Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith, put himself forward and said, "I will be the king." So he got chariots and horses ready with 50 men to run ahead of him, and his father had never rebuked him, saying, "Why do you behave as you do?" By asking, "Why do you behave as you do?" He was also very handsome, and was born next after Absalom. 7. Adonijah conferred with Joab, son of Zeruiah, and with Abiathar the priest, and they gave him their support. But Zadok the priest, and Benaiah, son of Jehoiadash, Nathan the prophet, Shimei, and Rai, and David's special guard did not join Adonijah. Sorry, I've been saying that wrong. Adonijah then sacrificed sheep, cattle, and fattened calves at the stone of Zoheleth near En-Rogel. He invited all his brothers, the king's sons, and the royal officials of Judah, but he did not invite Nathan the prophet, or Benaiah, or the special guard of his brother Solomon. Verse 11. Then Nathan asked Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, "Have you not heard that Adonijah, the son of Haggith, has become king, and our Lord David knows nothing about it? Now then, let me advise you on how we can save your own life and the life of your son Solomon. Go in to King David and say to him, 'My lord the king, did you not swear to me, your servant, surely Solomon will be your son shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne? Why then has Adonijah become king, while your servants are talking, while you are still there talking to the king? I will come in and add my word to what you have said." 15. So Bathsheba went in to see the aged king in his room, where Abishai the Shunammite was attending him. Bathsheba bowed down, prostrating herself before the king. "What is it you want?" the king asked. She said to him, "My lord, you yourself swore to me by your servant, by the Lord your God, Solomon your son shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne. But now Adonijah has become king, and you, my lord the king, did not know about it. He has sacrificed great numbers of cattle and fattened calves and sheep, and has invited all the king's sons, Abiathar the priest, and Joab the commander of the army. but has not invited Solomon your servant. 20. My lord the king, the eyes of all Israel are on you, to learn from you what you will, who will sit on the throne of the Lord my king after him. Otherwise, as soon as the Lord king is laid to rest with his ancestors, I and my son Solomon will be treated as criminals. 22. While she was still speaking with the king, Nathan the prophet arrived, and the king was told, Nathan the prophet is here. So he went before the king and bowed with his face to the ground. And Nathan said, Have you, my lord the king, declared that Adonijah shall be king after you, and that he will sit on your throne? Today he has gone down and sacrificed great numbers of cattle, fattened calves and sheep, and he has invited all the king's sons, the commanders of the army, and Abiathar the priest. Right now they are eating and drinking with him and saying, Long live King Adonijah. But me, your servant, and Zadok the priest, and Benaiah, son of Jehodiah, and your servant Solomon, he did not invite. Is something, my lord the king... Is this something the Lord the king has done without letting his servants know who should sit on the throne of my lord the king after him? Verse 28. The king David said, Call in Bathsheba, so she may come. So she came into the king's presence and stood before him. The king took an oath, As surely as the Lord lives, who has delivered me out of every trouble, I will surely carry out this very day what I swore to you by the Lord, the God of Israel. Solomon, your son, shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne in my place. 31. Then Bathsheba bowed down with her face to the ground, prostrating herself before the king, and said, May my lord the king David live forever. 32. King David said, Call in Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah, son of Jehodiah. When they came before the king, he said to them, Take the Lord's servants with you, and have Solomon, my son, mount on my mule, and take him down to Gihon. There have Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint him king over Israel. Blow the trumpet and shout, Long live King Solomon! Then you are to go up with him, and he is to come and sit on my throne and reign in my place. I have appointed him ruler over Israel and Judah. Benaiah, the son of Jehodiah, answered the king, Amen. May the Lord, the God of my lord, the king, so declare it. As the Lord was with my lord the king, so may he be with Solomon, to make his throne even greater than the throne of my lord King David. Verse 38. So Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah the son of Jehodiah, and the Kerethites and the Pelethites went down and had Solomon mount King David's mule, and they escorted him to Gihon. And Zadok the priest took the horn of oil from the sacred tent and anointed Solomon. Then they sounded the trumpet, and all the people shouted, Long live King Solomon! All the people went up after him, playing pipes and rejoicing greatly, so that the ground shook with the sound. 41. Adonijah and all the guests were with him heard it as they were finishing their feast. On hearing the sound of the trumpet, Joab asked, What is the meaning of all the noise in the city? 42. Even as he was speaking, Jonathan, son of Abiathar, the priest, arrived, and Adonijah said, Come in, a worthy man like you must be bringing good news. 43. Not at all, Jonathan answered. Our lord King David has made Solomon king. The king has sent with him Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah, son of Jehodiah, and the Kerethites and the Pelethites, and they have put him on the king's mule. And Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet have anointed him king at Gihon. From there they have gone up cheering, and the sound of and the city resounds with it. That's the noise you hear. Moreover, Solomon has taken his seat on the royal throne. Also, the royal officials have come to congratulate our Lord King David, saying, "May God make Solomon's name more famous than yours, and his throne greater than yours." And the king bowed in worship on his bed, and said, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has allowed my eyes to see my successor on my throne today." 49. At this, Adonijah's guests rose in alarm and dispersed. But Adonijah, in fear of Solomon, went and took the horns of the altar. And when Solomon was told, Adonijah is afraid of King Solomon, and is clinging to the horns of the altar, he says, "Let King Solomon swear to me today that he will not put his servant to death with the sword." 52. Solomon replied, "If he shows himself to be worthy, not a hair on his head will fall to the ground. But if evil is found in him, he will die." Then King Solomon sent men, and they brought him down from the altar. And Adonijah came and bowed to King Solomon, and Solomon said, "Go to your home." Well, that's all for today. It's going to take me a little while. I'm used to just doing the little, hey, just, no, this just seems weird. I might get used to it after a day or two. Alrighty. Well, we're in a new book, 1 Kings. 1 Kings is great. Now, Solomon, almost as awesome as David, but David takes the cake. He's the top shelf. He's the top shelf guy. If you have any books about David, they go on the top shelf. Right, actually, under Jesus. Right under Jesus. David was great. Solomon's great too, but Solomon is a little bit more purposeful messing up than David. All right, guys. We'll catch you again tomorrow for day 24. Can't believe it. It's just like they just keep ticking by. Like the sun goes down and comes right back up. Goes down, comes right back up. Happens every day. God bless you.